In this video, I want to do a painting of a landscape from a picture my dad took years ago that my mom had recently mentioned to me that he really liked. And the only place we have it is on a slide. And if you're not familiar with that, that's what it looks like. It's teeny tiny and you view it through a projector and that's it. So I'm going to try to give him a painting so that he doesn't have to put it into a projector every time he wants to look at it. Generally speaking, I would call this a sunrise landscape with smoke. This is a painting that I've not attempted before. It seems pretty straightforward. I think that I'm going to do the background first, and I'm going to use this Dr. P.H. Martin's concentrated liquid watercolor because it's going to give me a lot more vibrant color than my palette currently offers me. Using this 2-inch brush, I tilted my paper. I'm holding it in a vertical format because that's more comfortable. The sky needs to be really smooth and soft, which in the watercolor world, that equals wet on wet. Anytime you're talking about soft edges, smooth transitions, in color or value, then you need it to be wet on wet. That's the reason I need all of this space to be wet at once. It also makes it a little nerve-wracking because your window of time to manipulate this paint is small. When it dries, your window is shut. You can't work on it anymore without potentially causing it to have uneven areas or streaks. And I want it to look nice and bright, but I'm kind of scared to really push the color right away. So I'm just kind of like dabbling in the paint a little bit and testing it out. But I think I'm in the right color. Just know that I'm gonna have to push it in saturation quite a bit, especially before it dries. So I have a band of pink and a band of purple, and I'm gonna let those kind of merge and travel together because they're both wet, then that paint will settle naturally. And I can also just do this and just kind of work back and forth over them to help them merge a little bit without overblending. I don't want them to disappear completely into one color. I want it to be a graded wash, not a flat wash. And while this sky is drying, I want to work a little bit on the foreground, which is more of a navy or an indigo. But even the ground and the sky where they meet is really soft because this morning was like a misty, like foggy, cold morning. So I want it to have that mood, that tone. So I'm going to try to use some of this indigo with the P.H. Martin and see what I get. And while this little area is still wet, I want to drop in a little bit more saturated indigo in some areas to indicate that there's trees, a little bit of land in the background. And I want this all to be kind of hazy and out of focus, which again, that indicates it's going to be wet on wet. Anything that's hazy, blurry, out of focus, and soft, a lot of wet on wet in this image, especially in the first steps. Typically, you can do wet on wet first, let it dry, and then do your hard edges, as long as your hard edges are what is going to be darker. Because typically in watercolor, it creates more ease for you as an artist if you work light to dark and back to front. But as my students often remind me, there's always an exception to any of those rules. It's not really a rule, it's just maybe a guideline, I suppose. And I'm just using this round brush, just kind of trying to keep my shapes not quite uniform. Just putting in little hints of different values of this indigo. As I run out of paint, I know that it's going to get lighter in value. If I go back for more, then I know I'm back down to my really saturated indigo, which I need for these leaves. So I'm just going to speckle some of these leaves in here, since a lot of that color has dissipated and spread out and stretched to show the white paper underneath. I need to put that back in. And I'm going to use what I have on my brush. Didn't have a lot of drawing in this image because I would call it a skyscape. It's really the sky and this pillar of smoke. That's the star of this image. And my dad took a lot of pictures when we were younger, and most of them are on these slides, which my mom is painstakingly going through right now and trying to get some of our favorites and try to digitize them. A lot of families are probably doing that right now, but that's just the day and age we live in. But until then, I'm just going to go ahead and do a little watercolor of it so he can see it a little more often. And it may sound, I guess, gruesome to some that I'm painting a beautiful sunrise over a slaughterhouse, but again, this was a necessity for processing farm fresh meat and brings back a lot of great memories for my dad and spending time with the family, processing those early mornings, beautiful mornings like this, enjoying what God provided, not only the meat, but also the beautiful sunrise. I just think it brings him a lot of joy, and I hope this painting reminds him of that as well. And I'm sure he spent a lot of mornings really early, really tired, heading out to that slaughterhouse to go process some pork or some beef. And I think I was probably in middle school before I realized that other people got their beef and pork from the grocery store. I didn't even think about that. I just thought, you just go to the freezer and there it would be. So, of course, things as a child you take for granted. Little did I realize my dad was, working really late at the coal mines and then really early in the morning processing meat, and just pretty much always working very hard. So, which I know now how much of that he did. And I appreciate it so much. Both my parents, such hard workers, such loving parents. And it feels good to get to do something for them. Here we are all watching slides. And that's typically the only time we get to see those really neat family pictures. When we get together, we sit outside or inside, either one, and my dad will set up the carousel. And we get to see nice little flashbacks to our childhood and basically make fun of each other and the funny faces we're doing and who's that, and oh my goodness, look what you're wearing, and oh, remember when we did that? So it's just a lot of wonderful time together, and I hope that this painting will bring all of that back to the forefront of my parents' memories.
We were looking at
Okay, this is the part I'm working towards whenever I'm dealing with the focal point. It always adds to my nerves a little bit because I'm slightly worried about making just the right mark. So I'm making this like purple smoke, and I want it to look
Never.
like smoke.
How dare you?
Yes. But I also don't want to ruin what I have underneath. I am using this bleed-proof white, and I've mixed it with my purple, and it's not spreading like I want it. But my paper is also kind of dry, so I shouldn't be really that surprised. All right, change of plans. I gotta wet this a little bit more. I'm gonna use a paper towel with some water on it and just squeeze a little bit of it on there. I need this color to travel a little better. Oh, yeah, that's much better. So I'm gonna add a little of this smoke. I'm paying attention to my reference, looking at that back and forth, trying to mimic the pattern a little bit. I don't want it to look too uniform. That's what my hand will do if I stop looking at the reference. Getting some darker little patches in there. Just basically just dropping the color into the wet surface. And then what it does next always looks pretty organic because it just behaves the way it's designed to behave. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sure he's gonna like it. I know he's gonna be surprised. And I'm glad I got to share with you guys too.